So how much do you think live streaming, Twitch and stuff, is helping with this awareness? How do you use social media, Mark? So how big an organization is CureCMD?
I need answers.
Our first guest is Sunny, aka InsomniaDoodles. We had her on back in 2022, and we learned a lot about both her awesome live streaming and about the stigma around mental health and physical health. She's an advocate for rare diseases, chronic illnesses, invisible disabilities. Our other guest is Mark Beare from CureCMD. Mark has been a member of the CMD, the Congenital Muscular Dystrophy community, since 2015, when his daughter Bella was diagnosed with CMD. He serves as the Vice President of Research and Development for Corel during his workday and tries his best to entertain his 2 toddlers when not working.
A few moments later.
And I'm currently, I'm the general manager for a company called Malwarebytes now, actually, since
Nice.
I think my LinkedIn might be out of date is the problem. And I have 3 kids now. I think the intro you gave was a little bit outdated. I have 3 kids.
Now back to our show.
So Sunny, I know we've had you on before, but give a little background on yourself if you don't mind.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So, I stream on Twitch from time to time. Most of the time it's, to help raise awareness for things like rare diseases, chronic illness, invisible disabilities. It's something that I'm really passionate about because I live with a rare disease that has caused some invisible disabilities. So, basically I've got a rare congenital birth defect called septo-optic dysplasia, which is characterized by 3 indicators. You need 2 of 3 indicators to get a diagnosis. One is malformation of the optic nerve, malformation of the pituitary gland, and malformations within the midline of the brain. So I've got panhypopituitarism, meaning my pituitary gland doesn't produce any of the most of the hormones necessary for survival. I have optic nerve hypoplasia, which has caused me to be blind in both peripherals, and what vision I do have is pretty impaired. And I'm missing something called the septum pellucidum, which is a thin membrane in the midline of the brain. Some cases of septo-optic dysplasia are way more severe than mine, but I still deal with a lot of debilitating symptoms as a result of my rare disease. And it's impacted my life to the point where I'm only 32 years old, but I'm already on disability. But you know what? That gives me a lot of free time to raise awareness for things like this, and it's something I'm really passionate about and I enjoy doing, so I'm a little bit grateful for that, actually. And so I started live streaming because I do have the free time. It originally started with me just wanting to play video games and hopefully get some of that YouTube ad revenue that we've all heard so much about. That didn't wind up happening, but I did find a sense of community through live streaming that I really enjoyed, and I found that platform is really great for uplifting voices like my own, and raise awareness for conditions that are rare and most people might not have heard about. So that's where I got my start. That's who I am. I also do art streams from time to time. As a matter of fact, today for Rare Disease Day, I'm doing something special where if anybody donates $5 or more to any rare disease nonprofit of their choice, and send me a screenshot proving that you've made a donation, it can be any charity as long as they're helping folks with rare diseases. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes and draw any doodle that you request within reason. I mean, I can choose not to do any inappropriate requests, but that's what I'm doing today for Rare Disease Day, as well as sharing patient stories on the Rare Disease Day website as well. So it's been a lot of fun. I rambled on for long enough. Back over to you. Thank you.
We love it. Mark, are you doing anything for Rare Disease Days besides the stream?
Honestly, the CureCMD is doing a bunch. Historically, we've usually sent people to like congressional places in the country to try to advocate for rare disease. I think that's been something that's been challenging. Historically, just making people more aware that while there's rare in the name, the sum of the parts of different rare diseases is actually quite significant. There's a large population of people combined, at least in the US, that have rare diseases and generally don't get advocated for because they're all in these very small communities. And so I think we've sent people to Washington DC before to try to advocate, make sure that it's understood that there's numerous people affected by many different conditions. I personally, I am here in Oregon in my house and working when I'm not in the live stream today, but very active on social media, trying to build awareness for this and ensuring that people don't forget about those smaller communities of people affected by different diseases.
Cool.
Mhm.
So is CureCMD doing a lot for Rare Disease Day?
Yeah, it's a big day for us for building awareness. Right? We are, by definition of what we do, it's all very rare. You know, I think my daughter's condition is one of the largest subsets within CureCMD, and that's just a couple of hundred people in the world affected. And so we try to make a lot of noise about it. We try to get our audience, our affected families and individuals to share about it, and not just like build awareness, but it's like awareness about what, you know, it's like, what are you trying to get people to be aware of? And it's about knowing that there are people out there that are affected by things that are super rare, and what that means, and what it's like living with those things. Really, it's about advocacy for us. It's an opportunity for us to, you know, get our name out there, and it's an opportunity to generate some donations as well. I mean, Sunny was fantastic in what she was offering earlier in the show.
Yeah, that counts. Donate to CMD. I'll do the 5-minute doodle for you.
Sure.
All right. So how do people donate to CMD?
Yeah, if you go to CureCMD, if you look up CureCMD on Google, just search for it, you'll find our website really quickly. There's I think it's curecmd.org/donate is the URL to go to. But yeah, it's very easy to find our donate page on our homepage. Somebody has just posted it in the chat here, curecmd.org. I was correct, good. So yeah, if you go there and click on donate, you can choose to donate to a particular subtype of CureCMD if you know about different subtypes. If you want to just donate to the organization directly and have that donation go across the board, that's great too, and I appreciate anything that you can donate.
So can you tell us, going back to you, Mark, a little bit more about the organization CureCMD?
Yeah, I'm on the board of CureCMD. I have been since about 2 years after we got the diagnosis. It was actually an organization that was founded by parents. CMD is a form of muscular dystrophy. It's a congenital muscular dystrophy, which means it's passed on genetically. And there is other muscular dystrophy organizations out there, and they're good organizations. The MDA is the one I think people are most familiar with. But the MDA was very focused on like Duchenne. Duchenne's the most dominant form of muscular dystrophy that you see by the numbers, and that is something that they focused on heavily. But there was a feeling at the time when CureCMD started that there was other kind of smaller subsets of muscular dystrophy that were passed along congenitally that weren't really getting a lot of the focus. And there was also just like, whether it is a cure, like that's in the name for CureCMD, or just information sharing was lacking for this community of people. And so yeah, there's just a couple of different parents that got together at the time. I can't imagine what it was like for them. Like, they had very few people involved, and they knew of very few other affected individuals, and they were just like amassing more and more people over time. They didn't have a way to diagnose easily back then, you know, using DNA sequencing to find out if other people were affected. I think there's numerous people along the way where there was an early member of CureCMD that worked in a hospital, and she could almost spot people's traits and say, hey, I think you probably have this form of congenital muscular dystrophy, and you should probably go get a test done. Now it's, you know, you run a test and you can check to see if you've got a bunch of different, you can test yourself against a bunch of different diseases and see if you're affected by any of them. So CureCMD is, it's a smaller organization, much smaller than the MDA, and focusing really on, you know, congenital muscular disease, working on not only trying to find a cure. We fund a lot of different research grants from different groups around the world, but we have a really strong community. Is what I was talking about earlier, about having like a great Facebook group, and we have conferences and try to bring families and affected individuals together so they can share experiences, share learnings. Even as an example, sharing stuff like for a lot of these kids affected by LAMA2, which my daughter's affected by, they don't have the ability to stand or walk or reach, and so, you know, sharing about what Alexa skills you're using so that your kid can turn lights on and off, or you know, what car seats work for these young kids that have low strength, or, you know, just different things like that. Like, there's a lot of trial and error in trying to figure out what works for your affected family member, and sharing that information is huge. So yeah, it's a great organization. I'm super happy to be a part of it, and it's making a real difference in the lives of people affected by CMD.
So how big an organization is CureCMD?
Very small by just the headcount involved. We have a lot of volunteers from the community. We have a couple of full-time people that are running the organization. We have a president who's phenomenal. I'm not just saying that because I think she's watching. She is really phenomenal. I'll tell that to her face. And then we've got a research director that's helping us fund and take in grants, requests for grants, and determine who to give money to. And then, yeah, really a lot of it is, you know, when you have a charity or a non-profit that's trying to help develop a cure and fund treatments, I mean, the one thing you have to try to balance is your overhead expenses, right? When you receive a donation, that most people donating want that money to go directly to a cure, like, give it straight to the researchers. But the fact of the matter is any organization has some expenses tied to it. And so we try to keep the expenses as lean as we can. We need to have people that are running the organization, but you also don't want to have all of your expenses going to headcount and overhead. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to further some treatments along as well. So not that big, but very focused and got a really passionate group.
So how much do you think live streaming, Twitch and stuff, is helping with this awareness? I mean,
I've got 5 people watching. So that's 5 people that might not have heard about these conditions before.
I mean, it's really funny. Like we have this conversation all the time within the CureCMD board. Like we'll produce a video, and we'll spend a lot of time and effort, and sometimes a lot of money to produce a video, and we put it on YouTube, and it gets 200 views, and we're like, you look at everything else on YouTube, and it has millions and millions of views, or billions of views, or if you're Mr. Beast, you get like a lot. and like the fact of the matter is, like, one view matters, right? Like when you're talking about something like this, having one extra person be aware and being a fanboy of an individual or someone affected, like that matters, right? And so I think it really does. Like, whoever's here watching, I appreciate you watching and listening. And I think, for anyone who watches later, same for you. I appreciate anyone who's willing to listen to this and hear about it and learn. And so I think whether it is broadcast, it's a post, it's a viral post, or live streaming to us, an audience of whoever can come at that point in time, I think it all matters for us.
Actually, speaking of audience, we have over 1,500 people watching right now. So
what?
Check out,
nice.
Pretty good.
So CureCMD.org. If every one of you gave $5, then Sunny would be forced to draw pictures for months.
Oh no!
She would have busy day, sure.
You know what? I've got free time. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. If I can raise that much money for rare diseases, it'll all be worth it. I will draw doodles until the day that I die.
I saw Sunny's post about zebras being the symbol for rare disease awareness, and I think that explanation was a really nice analogy. Do you mind sharing that analogy again for those who
Yes,
didn't see
I would
it?
love to. Yes. So what I've got right here is a little zebra squish ball given to me by NORD, which is the National Organization for Rare Disorders. You guys shared their video at the beginning of the stream here. Fantastic group. I volunteered for them as their rare disease, or for the Rare Action Network. I was their state ambassador for my state of Indiana, helping to raise awareness for legislation and stuff that impacts folks living with rare diseases. And one of the things that they sent me was this little zebra squish ball thingy, and it tells you, says there's a little tag on it that says, "Why is the zebra the mascot of the rare disease community?" And on the inside there's like a little card that explains, in medicine, zebras are a symbol for rare diseases or conditions. One of NORD's key messages is that when you hear hoofbeats, it isn't always a horse. Sometimes it's a zebra. So that's in response to the old adage taught to medical students, as they're learning how to diagnose patients with conditions. They're taught to look for the most reasonable, most common diagnosis rather than more exotic conditions. So when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. That's where that comes from. Now, for most cases, that makes sense, right? Most folks don't have a rare disease. 1 in 10 Americans have a rare disease, but for most folks, it's more common, or more likely that they're going to have a more common condition. But that does have the unfortunate unintended consequence of making it much more difficult for folks who do have a rare disease to get the right diagnosis in a timely manner and then get the treatments they need to treat their rare disease. So that's where the whole zebra thing comes from.
That's really cool, and that is a good analogy. How do you use social media, Mark? You said a little bit about Facebook. Is that the main place where you guys are?
Yeah, I think like Facebook has a certain level of reach. Obviously, it's a walled garden, right? You need to log in, and you're only sharing to people that you're connected with or groups that you're in, and so that can be really effective. Honestly, for us, when we first got our diagnosis, we created a page for our daughter because we did have a lot of people who were really curious about what's happening and her progress and stuff like that. And so we created a page. We called it Bear It for Bella, which is spin on last name, first name. And yeah, we used that to post updates. We did a huge fundraiser right away when we got the diagnosis. And then we just, every time we do like a significant medical checkup on her and get kind of like status updates, we then, we'll share the updates on how she's doing and things like that. Just because it's kind of like Sunny had said earlier, like, it's exhausting to have that conversation over and over and over again, because generally they're not great updates. Like, this is a degenerative disease, and so generally it's getting worse every year, and it can be quite dampening on the spirits to have to have that conversation over and over and over again with everyone. It's easier to kind of broadcast it. But then that being said, the intricacy here is that my daughter is 8, and she's not yet an adult, and we need to be careful about what information we are giving out on her behalf about her, and not crossing that boundary as well. So it's a balance. It's hard to get right for any parent, right? How much to overshare about your kids when later on they're going to be upset with you that you put a bunch of pictures of them on social media. But yeah, so we use that, and then Twitter is a broader reach, just because you can post something and it goes out to anyone who wants to find it forever. But yeah, Facebook's probably the most common one we use.
Facebook and social media et al. Has its positives, and the ability to share advice is definitely one of them.
Yeah, 100%. Like my wife and I often talk about leaving, but there's that one thing, where you can go in and, I mean, there's the CureCMD group on Facebook. We know that we could go in there and just run a search on that group for certain keywords and find every post that's ever been written about it, like anything mentioning a wheelchair or mentioning contractures or anything, whatever. We can go back through the history of all the conversations that's been had there and learn from them. And that's an incredible resource.